Claire stood by the kitchen window, watching the soft glow of the late afternoon sun spill across the quiet street. The house was unusually silent, filled only with the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the distant chirping of birds outside. She sighed softly, her hand tracing the rim of her coffee mug. Lately, life felt like a series of quiet, predictable routines: dinner at 6, small talk with Daniel about work, and long evenings spent flipping through old photo albums, remembering moments that felt both distant and fleeting. Claire loved Daniel, she truly did. But somewhere in the comfort of their home, felt a quiet, unspoken longing for something she couldn't quite name. It wasn't dissatisfaction with her marriage, nor a lack of love. It was the kind of emptiness that crept in during the still moments. When the world slowed down and the heart whispered truths, it often hid during the rush of everyday life. She placed the mug on the counter and leaned against it, staring at the reflection in the window. Her own eyes looked tired yet curious. It's like someone who had lived a life full of hopes, but had learned to carry them carefully. Like fragile glass, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway snapped her from her thoughts. Claire's heart skipped a beat, not out of fear, but from curiosity. Daniel had mentioned he would have a guest tonight, someone he had met recently, but he hadn't said who. A small knot of anticipation formed in her chest. She smoothed her hair nervously and walked toward the door, trying to steady her breathing. When she opened it, Daniel stood there, holding the door open with his usual easy smile. But it wasn't just Daniel, there was someone else with him. A woman Claire had never seen before, standing quietly, almost hesitantly. Beside him, the woman looked elegant yet approachable, with warm eyes that carried a subtle sadness, as if she had carried a secret for too long. "Claire," Daniel said gently, "this is Anna." Claire blinked, taken aback. Anna extended her hand politely, and Claire shook it, her mind racing with questions. Who was she? Why was Daniel bringing her here? The curiosity mingled with a strange, inexplicable warmth. Something in Anna's presence felt familiar, though Claire couldn't place why. The three of them moved into the living room. Claire's eyes swept over Anna, trying to read her expression, to understand why she had come into their lives so suddenly. Anna smiled softly, but it was tinged with nervousness. Claire felt a pang of empathy for her. It was clear this evening was important. Though the reasons were still hidden behind gentle words and careful glances, dinner was served, and the conversation began awkwardly, like two people testing the waters in a quiet, uncharted lake. Daniel kept stealing glances at Anna, his smile soft and unsure. Claire noticed the way he seemed both protective and nervous, as though the presence of this woman meant something deeper than she yet understood. Claire felt a swirl of emotions: curiosity, caution, and a surprising sense of hope. There was something fragile about the moment, a quiet suspense that made her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from anticipation. She wondered if tonight would change everything, or if it would pass like a fleeting shadow on a sunny afternoon when dessert arrived. Daniel cleared his throat, his expression suddenly serious. "There's something I need to tell both of you," he said softly, his eyes moving between Claire and Anna. Claire's pulse quickened. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. Whatever Daniel was about to reveal, she knew instinctively. It would leave a mark not just on the evening, but on the quiet rhythm of their lives. She took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around her fork. The uncertainty, the questions, and the flutter of curiosity in her chest made her feel alive in a way she hadn't felt in months. The evening had settled into a gentle rhythm. Claire sat in the living room, sipping her tea, while Anna shared stories in a soft, almost hesitant voice. Daniel listened intently, his eyes reflecting both awe and a quiet sadness. Anna spoke of her childhood in a small town miles away, of summers spent under wide skies and winters wrapped in the scent of pine and wood smoke. She talked about her father, a man she had never truly known, and the emptiness she had felt growing up without the warmth of a family she longed for. Claire found herself leaning in, drawn to the sincerity in Anna's words. "Sometimes I used to imagine what it would be like to have someone who really knew me." Anna admitted. Someone who understood the things I couldn't say. Claire's heart tightened. She understood that feeling all too well. There had been nights, years ago, when she had felt the same lonely in her own home, yearning for connection, for understanding, for a love that went beyond words. Daniel reached across the table, brushing a stray lock of hair from Anna's face. The movement was tender, protective, almost brotherly, but it carried a weight of unspoken emotion. Claire noticed it and felt a mixture of relief and curiosity. This wasn't just a casual visit. There was history here, threads of life that had been waiting to intertwine as the evening wore on. Memories began to surface, not just Anna's, but Claire's and Daniel's too. Claire remembered the early days of their marriage, the laughter that filled their tiny apartment, the whispered dreams late at night. Daniel had always been attentive, thoughtful, a man whose love was quiet but unwavering. And yet, even in those early days, there had been moments of distance and hesitation. It's an unspoken worry that he carried with him about his past, about the parts of himself he kept hidden. Anna noticed it too. "You remind me a little of someone I knew once," she said softly, almost to herself. Someone kind, patient, but carrying things too heavy for them to share. Claire looked at her, and for the first time, she realized that the bond forming here wasn't just about Anna and Daniel, it was about understanding, empathy, and the human need to belong. The years of absence, of questions left unanswered, had shaped Anna. But they had also prepared her for this moment of connection. Daniel cleared his throat. "I never expected to meet her," he said, his voice low, filled with reflection. "And yet, I think I always hoped I would find her someday." Claire watched him, feeling the layers of his life unfold in a way she hadn't seen before. She thought of the small ways Daniel had always loved her, the notes he left in her books, the way he remembered the little things she enjoyed, the quiet gestures that spoke volumes. That love had never faltered, even when life felt complicated. Anna smiled faintly, a mixture of gratitude and melancholy in her eyes. "I never imagined it would feel like this," she admitted. "Like finding a missing piece I didn't know I'd lost." Claire felt a gentle warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't jealousy, not in the slightest. It was something deeper: hope. Hope that hearts could heal, that the past could finally meet the present, and that love, in its many forms, could find its way through years of silence and longing. For a long moment, the three of them sat in quiet reflection. Outside, the sky darkened to a deep indigo, the stars beginning to peek through, shy and delicate. It felt like a promise, small, steady, and entirely real, that what had been absent for so long could finally be embraced. Claire realized that night that life was full of unexpected turns. But sometimes those turns led to the most meaningful connections. Sometimes the bonds that felt the most fragile were the ones that carried the most love. And sometimes the heart's quiet longing wasn't a weakness, it was a guide, pointing toward the moments and people that mattered most. As the clock ticked softly, Claire looked at Daniel and Anna, the two people who had shaped this evening with honesty and courage. And she knew that whatever happened next, their lives would never be the same. Not because of a secret revealed, but because of a connection reborn, one built on patience, understanding, and the unspoken promise of belonging. Then, the next morning, sunlight spilled through the living room windows, casting a soft glow over the quiet house. Claire moved slowly, still carrying the lingering emotions from the night before. She hadn't expected this evening to be so profound. Something about Anna's presence and Daniel's gentle care had stirred something inside her, realization that life had more depth, more unexpected connections than she had allowed herself to see in recent months. Anna appeared in the kitchen first, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers she had picked on her way from the guest room. "I thought you might like these," she said softly, placing them on the counter. Claire smiled, the gesture simple but full of meaning. It wasn't about the flowers themselves, it was the thoughtfulness, the acknowledgement of shared moments that made her heart swell quietly. Daniel appeared behind Anna, leaning against the doorway with a faint smile. "You didn't have to do that," he said, His voice warm, though clearly touched. Anna shook her head gently. I wanted to. It feels right. Claire noticed the way Daniel looked at her in that moment, a mixture of gratitude, love, and reassurance. It reminded her of the early days of their marriage, before the routines of life had dulled the little sparks. And yet, this was different. The spark wasn't just nostalgia. It was a rediscovery of hope and connection, one that included Anna in a way that felt natural, even necessary, as the morning unfolded. Small coincidences seemed to align in their favor. A shared laugh over a memory from Daniel's childhood. A forgotten photo that sparked a story. A gentle tease from Anna that made Claire feel at ease, all of it stitched together like threads forming a tapestry of belonging. It was a reminder that life had a way of bringing people together, often when they least expected it. Later, they moved to the porch, the air crisp and sweet with early autumn scents. Daniel picked up a small stone from the path, handing it to Claire. I found this yesterday, he said. It reminded me of something important. Sometimes even small things can hold meaning if you look closely enough. Claire held the stone in her hand, feeling its smooth surface. She thought of the past, of the quiet moments where life had felt heavy, and how tonight, somehow, everything seemed lighter. She looked at Daniel and Anna, realizing that the bond between them was growing, not forced, not hurried, but steady, patient, and sincere. For Claire, the most powerful moment came unexpectedly. Anna had moved to water the small potted plants on the porch, and Daniel reached out instinctively to steady a slightly tilted pot. Their hands brushed, and for a split second, time felt suspended. It wasn't about romance or desire, it was about connection, trust, and the quiet affirmation that they were all part of the same story now. Claire felt a swell of emotion, a mix of joy and relief, knowing that hearts could heal, families could expand, and love could take new forms without losing its essence. The day wore on, filled with simple, meaningful moments. Shared laughter over breakfast, quiet conversations about hopes for the future, and the warmth of understanding that only comes from true openness. By evening, Claire felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in months. As Anna prepared to leave, she hugged Claire gently. Thank you for making me feel welcome, she whispered. I've waited a long time for this. Claire smiled through her own tears. You were always welcome, she said. Daniel wrapped his arms around Claire afterward, holding her in a quiet, steady embrace. No words were necessary. Everything that had been unspoken, the love, the longing. The understanding was felt deeply between them. As the door closed behind Anna, Claire stepped back and looked at Daniel. Life has a way of surprising us, she said softly. Daniel nodded, smiling. And sometimes those surprises bring exactly what we need. In that moment, Claire realized something profound. Happiness wasn't about perfection or predictability. It was about the courage to embrace connection, the willingness to let the heart heal, and the grace to welcome love in all its forms. And as the stars began to twinkle outside, it felt ready for whatever new chapters life would bring, together with the people who truly mattered.